I didn't know my entire life was going to change because of one sentence. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, not a screaming fight, not a door slammed so hard the frames shake. Just 4 words, said with a cold calm that made my stomach go hollow. Stop suffocating me. He said it like my concern was poison, like my love was a hand around his throat. And the worst part? For months before that, I had been running in circles trying to be right for him, only to realize there was no version of me that would ever be enough. One week, I worked too many hours. The next, I didn't prioritize him. One night, I wasn't romantic enough. Then suddenly, like a switch flipped, I was too clingy, too intense, too much. Every day became a test I didn't know I was taking. Every small thing I did became evidence in a case he was building against my character. I lived on edge, bracing for the next explosion. Until that Tuesday. I walked through the front door around 6:30 p.m. after a normal day at work, and the house felt staged, too quiet, too deliberate. Then I saw him in our bedroom, a suitcase laid open on the bed, neat stacks of shirts folded with a precision that didn't match the chaos he'd been accusing me of. I stood in the doorway, confused in the most humiliating way possible, like I'd walked into the wrong life. What's happening? I asked. He didn't even look up. He just kept folding. I need time away, he said, as if he were reading a line he'd rehearsed. I'm staying with my friend Marcus for a few weeks. A few weeks. Those words should have been softer, temporary, reassuring. But the way he said them felt like a door being quietly locked from the inside. How long is a few weeks? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged, still refusing my eyes. A couple, maybe longer. I remember my hands, how they hung at my sides like they didn't belong to me, how my heart beat too hard in my throat. I tried reasoning, genuinely tried. We can figure this out together, I said. We don't need to do this. That's when he finally looked at me, not with love, not even with anger, with something worse. Finality. I'm not asking for permission, he said. I'm informing you. I felt my body go cold. 13 years. 13 years of building routines, traditions, inside jokes, holidays, furniture choices, quiet mornings, shared groceries, shared bills, shared life. And he was leaving over what sounded like me checking in too much when he went out with friends. The logic didn't add up. It didn't match the intensity. It didn't match the weight of what he was doing. But there was no reasoning with him. He zipped the suitcase, grabbed his car keys from the dresser, and walked past me like I was a piece of furniture. No hug. No pause. No, I'm sorry. Just the click of the front door. And then silence. So thick it felt like it pressed against my ears. That first night, I kept expecting to hear him moving around. A cabinet closing, a phone buzzing, the shower turning on. His voice, even if it was annoyed. But there was nothing. By Saturday, I started doing what women always do when a relationship breaks. I started blaming myself. Maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should prove I care. Maybe I should soften first, even if I didn't understand what I did wrong. So I texted him, "Are you okay?" 3 hours. Then one word came back. Fine. The next day, I tried calling, straight to voicemail. So I texted again, my thumb hovering like it was afraid of what it might unleash. "Can we talk about what's happening?" His reply came an hour later, and it landed like a slap. "Stop suffocating me. I'll contact you when I want to." I stared at my phone until my eyes burned. Suffocating. That's what he called basic concern for the man who had just walked out of our home. I typed one word back. Understood. And then something in me shifted. Not anger. Not revenge. Relief. If he wanted space, perfect. I would give him space, so clean and complete, he'd feel what it was like to live without my presence holding his world together. I muted his notifications first. Messages could still arrive, but they wouldn't live in my pocket like a heartbeat I couldn't control. Then I turned off location sharing, the one we'd kept for years. Then I removed him from my emergency contacts and put my cousin Derek there instead. When I sat back on the couch afterward, waiting for guilt to flood me, Something else came instead. A quiet, unexpected exhale. He wanted me to stop chasing? Done. No more messages. No more calls. No more walking on eggshells. No more trying to translate his moods into instructions for how to be loved. My number was the same if he wanted to reach me, but I was finished begging for a place in my own marriage. That night, I slept better than I had in months, and I had no idea that my peace, my quiet, calm, literal obedience was about to make him spiral in a way he never saw coming. Because in his mind, I wasn't supposed to actually let go. I was supposed to fight. And when I didn't, everything started to unravel. I'm 31. The number still feels strange in my mouth sometimes. Old enough to know better, young enough to still be surprised by how quickly a life can crack. I've always been the steady one. Not loud, not dramatic, not the type to throw a glass or scream in a hallway. I'm the woman who shows up early, triple checks the details, make sure everyone gets home safe. The woman who believes if you try hard enough, love can be maintained the way you maintain a house. Cleaning the mess before it becomes rot. Fixing small leaks before they turn into floods. That was me. And for 13 years, I believed my marriage was something I could keep alive through effort, patience, and a little self-sacrifice. Because that's what women are taught, isn't it? If something is broken, it must be because you didn't nurture it enough. My job didn't help. I work in an office environment that runs on deadlines, meetings, and constant performance metrics. Days blur together in emails and conference rooms. Some seasons are quiet, some are brutal. And for the last year, it had been brutal. Projects stacking on projects, pressure building in my chest like a held breath. I didn't think it was a crime to work hard, but in our house, it became one. Because my husband, him, started treating my time like a scoreboard. If I came home late, I didn't care. If I came home early, I hovered. If I tried to talk, I made everything a big deal. If I stayed quiet, I withdrew. There was always a reason I was wrong, but I'm getting ahead of myself. 13 years is a long time to compress into a story, and it didn't start like this. It never starts like this. We met when I was 18 and he was 19. So young that love felt like oxygen, and we didn't know the difference between chemistry and compatibility. It was at a friend's gathering, one of those casual nights where someone's living room becomes too crowded, music too loud, and everyone's laughing like the future will never arrive. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room. He didn't need to be. He had this way of standing slightly apart, watching everything like he was deciding what mattered. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not a big grin, just a small curve that made it feel like a private moment. Then he walked over and said something simple. "Do you want something to drink?" And the way he said it, like it mattered whether I was comfortable, hooked me immediately. We talked for hours, not the surface level stuff, not the boring, "what's your major?" questions. We talked about what scared us, what we wanted, what kind of life felt real. He told me he wanted a marriage that looked calm from the outside. Stable, respectable, successful. The kind people admired. I told him I wanted a marriage that felt safe from the inside. At the time, I thought those were the same thing. When you're young, you believe love is a straight line. Meet, fall, build, win. No one tells you love is a living thing. It changes shape. It gets sick. It can be starved. We grew up together. He saw me through the awkward years, the first serious job, the first apartment where the heat barely worked and the walls were thin enough that our neighbors' arguments felt like they were in our kitchen. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That's what I told myself. We married in our mid-20s. Not a huge wedding. Something reasonable. Family, friends, a venue that didn't bankrupt us. He was the one who put the ring on my finger. I remember that moment so clearly. The way his hand shook slightly, the way he exhaled after, like he'd been holding his breath for months. People clapped. Someone cried. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. And I meant it when I said my vows. I meant every word. For a long time, it was good. Not perfect, but good. We had routines, Sunday grocery runs, takeout nights, little jokes that didn't make sense to anyone else. We built a home piece by piece, buying furniture only when we could afford it, making compromises that felt normal. But somewhere around year 11, maybe year 12, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. He got more impatient. He'd sigh when I asked questions. He'd look at his phone while I talked, like I was background noise. He started using phrases like, "You're overthinking. Can you just relax? Why do you always make this heavy?" And like an idiot, I tried to become smaller. I tried to become easier. I started adjusting my life around his moods without realizing I was doing it. If he had a stressful day, I tiptoed. If he seemed distant, I tried harder. If he seemed affectionate, I clung to that warmth like it was proof the marriage still existed. And the worst part? His family saw it before I did. His mother would call and speak in that careful tone people use when they're pretending they're not judging you. "Sweetheart," she'd say, "he's been under a lot of pressure. You know how he gets." As if his moods were weather and I was supposed to forecast them. Sometimes she'd ask, indirectly, whether I was taking care of him properly, if I was cooking enough, if I was making home feel peaceful, if I was being supportive. Never once did she ask whether he was being kind. His aunt, who I actually liked, was more honest. She'd check in sometimes with messages that felt like she was trying to reach me without stepping on toes. "How are you really doing? You seem tired lately. Don't forget to take care of yourself, too." I appreciated her, but I didn't want to admit anything was wrong. Admitting it would make it real. I didn't want real. I wanted fixable. And then the complaints started. First, I worked too many hours. He'd stand in the doorway while I answered emails at the kitchen table and say, "Are you done yet?" I'd close my laptop faster than necessary and apologize like my job was a betrayal. Then it flipped. Suddenly, if I tried to be present, if I asked about his day, if I checked in when he went out with friends, I was suffocating him. If I didn't check in, I didn't care. It became a maze with no exit, and I kept running through it anyway, thinking if I found the right combination, less work, more affection, less talking, more patience, I could bring us back. That's the mindset that keeps women trapped. The belief that if you just perform love correctly, you'll be rewarded with stability. I didn't understand then that the relationship had stopped being about love. It had started being about control, about him getting to define reality, and me bending myself into whatever shape made him feel powerful. By the time that Tuesday came, the suitcase, the folded stacks of clothes, the cold voice, my body was already exhausted. Not just from the arguments, from the constant mental math, from waking up every morning and wondering, what version of me will be acceptable today? And when he walked out, leaving 13 years behind him like it was a coat he didn't want anymore, I finally stopped doing the math. I just listened. I gave him the space he demanded. And that's when I discovered something that still shocks me to say out loud. Without him in the house, I could breathe. But peace has a way of revealing things you avoided. And in the quiet that followed, I started noticing the small, ugly truths I'd ignored for years. The first one hit me harder than I expected, because the moment I stopped chasing him, my life didn't fall apart. It started coming back together. The first thing I noticed after he left wasn't loneliness, it was silence. Not the awkward, heavy kind, the kind that presses on your chest and makes you panic, but a clean silence. A silence without tension humming underneath it. No invisible tripwires, no emotional landmines waiting for the wrong tone or the wrong word. The house felt neutral. That should have scared me more than it did. Instead, it unsettled me in a quieter way. Like realizing you've been living with a constant ringing in your ears, and only now noticing what quiet actually sounds like. The first night, I barely slept. Not because I missed him, but because my body didn't know how to relax without staying alert. I kept waking up, heart racing, expecting to hear him pacing, sighing, slamming a cabinet shut, or muttering something sharp under his breath. Nothing came. By the second night, I slept straight through until morning. That should have been my first clue. The days that followed were strange. Not dramatic, not tragic, just off balance. Like I was relearning how to exist without checking someone else's emotional temperature every 5 minutes. I made coffee without commentary. He used to hover behind me in the kitchen, watching the amount of caffeine I poured like it was a moral failing. That's your third cup. You're going to be wired all day. Do you really need that much now? I drank it slowly, standing by the window, sunlight spilling across the counter. No judgment, no sighs, no correction. At work, something shifted too. I didn't realize how much energy I'd been wasting until it came back to me all at once. I stopped staring at my phone every 10 minutes, wondering if he'd text, wondering if I should text, wondering how long was too long, wondering if silence meant punishment. Instead, I focused. And I was good at my job, really good. Projects that had been dragging suddenly moved forward. My thoughts felt clearer. My shoulders sat lower, like they'd finally dropped from around my ears. One morning, my coworker Jennifer stopped by my desk mid-morning and tilted her head at me. "You seem different," she said. I laughed it off. "Different how?" "Lighter," she replied. "Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." I shrugged, but her words followed me for the rest of the day, because she wasn't wrong. At home, the pattern continued. I ordered food from the Chinese place he always complained about. Too greasy, too salty, too unhealthy. I ate it on the couch, legs tucked under me, watching a show I liked without someone criticizing the plot, the acting, or the fact that I'd chosen it. It felt indulgent in a way that surprised me. By the middle of the week, I fell into a rhythm. Work, gym, home, simple, predictable, calm. I called my friend Marcus, someone I hadn't really seen in almost a year, not because we'd fought, because my husband didn't like him. He'd never said it outright, just enough comments over time to make it easier to stop calling. Marcus didn't interrogate me when I explained things. "He's staying with a friend for a bit," I said, keeping it neutral. Marcus just nodded. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and realized I meant it. We grabbed beers after work and talked about nothing important. Work nonsense, old memories, random plans that didn't require anyone's approval. When I got home that night, it hit me. I hadn't thought about my husband once in 3 hours. Not in anxiety, not in guilt, not even in anger. The next morning, guilt crept in late, quiet, sneaky. The kind women are trained to feel when they're not actively suffering. Shouldn't I be more upset? Shouldn't I be trying harder? Shouldn't I be devastated? That's when the messages started coming in, not from him. From his family. First, his mother. Her text was polite but probing. "Is everything okay between you two?" I stared at it for a long moment before replying. He asked for space, so I'm giving it to him. The response came quickly. "Oh, I didn't realize things were that serious." Neither did I thought, but I didn't say it. I told her she should ask her son if she wanted details. Then I put my phone down. A few days later, his aunt reached out. She was more direct. "Hey, I heard things were rough. Just checking in. Are you doing okay?" That one landed differently. I told her the truth, carefully. "I'm good. He wanted time away. I'm respecting that." She replied almost immediately. "That's mature. Most women would be blowing up his phone." I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. Most women. The implication sat heavy in my chest. That being calm, that listening, that respecting boundaries, those weren't expected of me. What was expected was desperation. And without realizing it, I started to see the pattern more clearly. The conflict hadn't started with the suitcase. It had started months, maybe years earlier, in the way my concern was labeled control, in the way my patience was treated like weakness, in the way my silence was punished and my voice was criticized. He didn't want space. He wanted pursuit. He wanted proof. Proof that he mattered more than my job, more than my peace, more than my dignity. And when I stopped providing that proof, the balance shifted. By the end of the first week, something strange happened. I felt peace. Real peace. And underneath it, something else began to surface. Something uncomfortable, something I'd been avoiding. a question I couldn't ignore anymore. If my life felt this much better without him, what exactly had I been fighting so hard to hold on to? That question didn't have an answer yet, but it planted itself deep inside me, and it was only a matter of time before it started to grow. Because the more distance I gave him, the more his behavior began to change, and the cracks in his version of the story were about to show. The second week began quietly, too quietly. The kind of quiet that feels temporary, like the calm before something sharp breaks the surface. By then, I'd stopped checking my phone out of habit, not out of bitterness, not to make a point. I just didn't need to anymore. My days had structure again. My nights didn't end with me replaying arguments in my head, wondering what I could have said differently, softer, better. I went to the gym again, really went. Not rushing through a workout because I felt guilty for taking time for myself. I lifted weights, ran until my lungs burned, let the tension bleed out through sweat instead of tears. That alone felt like rebellion. At work, my productivity shot up in a way that startled even me. Tasks I'd been dragging for weeks suddenly clicked into place. I stayed late one night, not because I had to, but because I wanted to finish something cleanly. When I got home, the house didn't feel empty. It felt mine. That was the moment, standing in the kitchen, eating dinner alone, content, that the vibration hit my phone. I didn't jump. That should have been another warning sign. The message wasn't from him. It was from his mother again. "Have you talked to him yet?" I read it twice. "No," I replied. "He asked me not to contact him. I'm respecting that." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she finally wrote. My stomach tightened. "There hasn't," I answered. He was very clear. No response after that. I set the phone down and stared at the wall longer than necessary because something felt off. Not dangerous, just unstable. Like a structure that looked solid until you noticed the cracks running underneath. That Friday night, Marcus invited me out downtown with a few people from our old bowling league. Normally, I would have declined without thinking. My husband hated when I went out without him. He never said it outright, but the tension afterward, the comments, the coldness, made it easier to stay home. But now, he wasn't here. And he'd made it very clear he didn't want me contacting him. So I went. We met up at a sports bar, nothing fancy, just loud TVs, sticky tables, familiar faces. When they saw me, the reaction surprised me. "Look who's alive," Jason laughed, pulling me into a hug. "We thought you'd disappeared," someone else added. "Life got busy," I said lightly, "but I'm back now." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The night was easy. No tension, no drama, just noise, laughter, and the simple comfort of being around people who didn't make me feel like I was constantly failing. On the drive home, I realized something that sent a strange chill through me. I hadn't felt the urge to explain myself once. Not my marriage, not my choices, not my absence. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. Saturday morning, I woke up naturally. No alarm, no pit in my stomach. I made breakfast, a real one. Eggs, bacon, toast. The kind of meal he used to criticize for being too much. I ate slowly, enjoyed it, and then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was his aunt. "Hey," she wrote, "just checking in. Are you okay?" "Yes," I replied. "I really am." She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was careful. "He's not doing great." I felt my chest tighten, not with concern, but with recognition. "Not doing great how?" I asked. There was a pause. "He's upset that you haven't reached out." I stared at the screen. "He told me not to," I typed back. "So I didn't." Another pause. "I know," she wrote. "I just thought you should know." That was the moment. The exact moment something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't about space. This was about power. He didn't want silence. He wanted me waiting in it. He wanted me anxious, apologetic, ready to rush back the moment he snapped his fingers. And when I didn't, the narrative started shifting. By Monday of week 3, the messages escalated. Not from him, from everyone else. His mother called. I let it go to voicemail. His cousin texted something vague about family concerns. Even Rachel, the friend he was supposedly staying with, sent a short message. We should probably talk. I didn't respond because the truth was simple. If he wanted to talk to me, he knew how. My number hadn't changed. My address hadn't changed. My existence hadn't vanished. He had chosen silence. I had honored it. And that, apparently, was unacceptable. Tuesday morning, I walked into work with my phone on silent, completely focused on a major presentation I'd been preparing for weeks. Career-defining work, the kind of thing that could change everything. I didn't look at my phone until it was over, until my boss pulled me aside and said, "Excellent work. We're moving forward with your proposal." I was floating as I walked back to my desk. And then I pulled my phone from my pocket. My stomach dropped. 87 unread messages, all from him. The first one came at 8:42 a.m. Hey. Then, how are you? Are you ignoring me? I can't believe you're doing this. Answer me. Where are you? By the end, they were frantic, aggressive, demanding. 23 missed calls. I sat down slowly, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't concern. This was panic, control slipping through his fingers. I took a breath and typed one sentence. You asked me not to contact you. I respected that. What changed? 30 seconds later, my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted, I'm at work. I can't talk right now. The reply was instant. When can you talk? When I'm done working. This is important. So is my job. 3 dots. Gone. Back. Gone again. Then, you've changed. I stared at that message for a long time because he was right. I had changed, just not in the way he thought. And whatever illusion he'd been holding on to, whatever story he'd been telling himself about me chasing, begging, waiting, it was about to shatter completely. I didn't call him back that day. Not out of spite, not to punish him. I didn't call because I was working. Because for the first time in a long time, I was choosing reality over emotional chaos. I put my phone face down on my desk and finished my tasks with hands that were steadier than I expected. But inside, something was unraveling. Not in a dramatic way, not with tears or panic. It was more like a slow, careful inventory. Every message, every missed call, every shift in his tone, from casual to accusing, from confused to furious. I recognized it all too well. This wasn't new behavior. This was the same cycle I'd been trapped in for years, just clearer now because I wasn't standing inside it anymore. At lunch, I sat with my coworker Kevin, who noticed immediately that something was off. You look tense, he said, biting into his sandwich. Everything okay? I hesitated, then told the truth. My husband broke 4 weeks of silence this morning, I said calmly. With 87 messages. Kevin froze mid-chew. 87? I counted. And you're just sitting here? I told him I'd talk when I was done working. Kevin let out a low whistle. That's impressive. I smiled faintly. It's just boundaries. The word felt strange in my mouth. Heavy. Earned. The messages resumed around 2 p.m. Please call me. We need to talk. This is serious. I'm not playing games. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then I typed, neither am I. You told me exactly what you wanted. I gave it to you. That's not fair. What's not fair is expecting me to guess what you meant instead of listening to what you said. You know I didn't mean it like that. How would I know that? Stop being difficult. That sentence, that one, hit harder than the rest. Because it was the same line he'd used every time I didn't play along. Every time I asked for clarity, every time I took his words seriously instead of translating them into something softer for his comfort, I put the phone away. At 3:30, Rachel's husband, Mike, called. I answered, because I trusted him more than anyone else in this situation. Hey, he said carefully, he's not doing great. He's been crying all morning. I closed my eyes. I told him I'd talk after work, I said. I meant it. He thinks you're avoiding him. I'm at my job, I replied. Doing my job. Mike sighed. You're right. I'll tell him. At 4 o'clock, I wrapped up my workday. Another message buzzed in. If you don't call me in the next hour, I'm coming to your office. My stomach dropped. I typed back immediately. Don't. I'm serious.
So am I.
I'll call you tonight, on my time, not yours. I didn't rush home. I stopped at the grocery store. I took my time choosing what I wanted for dinner. I went home, changed clothes, poured myself a drink. At 6 p.m. exactly, I called him. Where have you been? He demanded the moment he picked up. Working, I said evenly. Then grocery shopping. I've been trying to reach you all day. I know. I told you I'd call when I was done working, and here I am. Silence. Then softer. I just needed to hear your voice. You're hearing it now, I replied. What do you want? His voice cracked. Why are you being like this? Like what? Cold, distant. I took a breath. You asked for space. You told me to stop suffocating you. I'm giving you what you asked for. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? You weren't supposed to actually do it. There it was. The truth, slipping out unguarded. So you wanted me to ignore your direct request? I asked. No, he said quickly. I wanted you to care enough to try. I did try, I said. 2 days after you left, you shut me down, so I backed off. You were supposed to fight harder. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. Why? I asked. So you could reject me again? He started crying. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I said calmly. I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. I made a mistake, he whispered. I was emotional. Then you should have been clearer, I replied, because I'm not a mind reader. Another pause. I need to see you, he said. Why? We need to talk. In person. Not tonight, I said. Tomorrow, after work. Come home. No, I replied without hesitation. Public place. He resisted, then sighed. Fine. We agreed on a time and place. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else. Certainty. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was responding. And I knew, deep down, that tomorrow wasn't about fixing anything. It was about facing the truth we'd both been avoiding. And once it was spoken out loud, there would be no going back. I barely slept that night. Not because I was anxious about seeing him, but because my mind wouldn't stop rearranging the past. Moments I'd brushed off, conversations I'd minimized, the way I'd learned to apologize before I even knew what I was apologizing for. When morning came, I didn't feel dread. I felt heavy, but grounded. At work, the day moved slowly, like time itself was bracing for impact. I kept my phone on silent, face down. I refused to let my focus splinter again. Around noon, Jennifer stopped by my desk with a coffee. You okay? She asked gently. Yeah, I said, just dealing with something personal. She studied my face for a second longer than necessary. If you need backup tonight, someone to text, someone to remind you you're not crazy, I'm here. That landed harder than I expected, because women don't offer that unless they recognize something. By mid-afternoon, the messages started again, from his family. His mother called twice. His aunt texted. Even his cousin, someone I barely spoke to, sent a message that read, "He's really hurting. You should talk to him." I stared at my phone and felt something twist inside me. Not guilt. Pressure. The kind that comes when people decide your boundaries are negotiable because they're inconvenient. I replied to none of them. At 5:30, I packed up my desk and drove straight to Miller's Coffee. I arrived early, 15 minutes early, on purpose. I chose a corner table in the back, my back against the wall so I could see the entire room. Ordered a black coffee. Sat upright, steady. At 6:03, he walked in. 3 minutes late. He spotted me immediately, hesitated, then walked over like he was approaching something fragile. Hi, he said quietly. Sit, I replied. He folded his hands on the table, fingers interlaced, posture tight. I'm sorry about earlier today, he began. Showing up at your office, that wasn't okay. You're right, I said evenly. It wasn't. He looked down. I panicked. Why? I asked. He swallowed. Because you weren't responding. Because you seemed fine. There it was again. My calm frightened him more than my anger ever had. Fine isn't betrayal, I said. It's adjustment. He shook his head. It felt like you didn't care. I stopped chasing you, I corrected. That's not the same thing. He leaned forward. We can fix this. I didn't move. Can we? I asked. Or do you just want things to go back to how they were? Me apologizing, you pulling away, and both of us pretending that's normal. That's not fair, he said quickly. It's accurate, I replied. He reached across the table. I pulled my hand back. His face fell. Please, he whispered. I thought you'd fight. For what? I asked. To be told again that I'm too much? To be punished for caring? His silence answered for him. I don't want a marriage where I have to walk on eggshells, I continued. Where your words don't mean what they say, and I'm blamed for taking them seriously. That's not who I am, he protested. It's who you've been, I said calmly, and I'm done pretending otherwise. His eyes filled with tears. He looked around, noticing the public space, the quiet attention of strangers. Everyone's staring, he whispered. You chose to show up at my office, I replied. This is exactly why I said public place. He nodded, defeated. I need more time, he said. I can change. I already gave you time, I said. And in that time, I changed. I stood up. Wait, he said, panic creeping back into his voice. We just started talking. No, I replied. You just started realizing I'm serious. I left him there, hands still folded, coffee untouched, and walked out without looking back. That night, my phone rang 17 times. I didn't answer. The next morning, he was waiting in the parking lot at my office. Please, he said as I walked past, just 5 minutes. I didn't stop. Security intervened. At lunch, my boss called me into his office. Everything okay? He asked. I heard there was a disturbance. Personal matter, I said. Won't happen again. He nodded. Good. Because the promotion we discussed? It's yours next month. I should have felt elated. Instead, I felt tired. That evening, he showed up at the basketball court where I met friends. Marcus stepped in front of him before he could reach me. She doesn't want to talk to you right now, Marcus said calmly. You don't speak for her, he snapped. Actually, Marcus replied, I do. She asked me to. He walked away in tears. Jason jogged over. That was rough. Yeah, I said, but necessary. By Friday, the narrative had fully shifted. I wasn't the loving wife giving space anymore. I was the cold one, the difficult one, the woman who gave up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't correct the story because escalation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that everyone around you is more comfortable blaming you than confronting the person who caused the damage. And that's when I knew I was getting close to the breaking point, the real one, the kind you don't come back from. The quiet after escalation is the hardest part. Not the arguments, not the tears, not even the accusations whispered behind your back. It's the stillness that comes when you realize there's nothing left to explain. By Saturday morning, my phone was finally silent. No calls, no texts, no just checking in messages wrapped in concern, but edged with expectation. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, and for the first time since he left, the weight hit me all at once. Not grief for the marriage, grief for myself. For the woman I had been for so long, the one who bent, softened, translated, absorbed, the one who believed love meant endurance, the one who thought being chosen required self-erasure. I made coffee and didn't drink it, just held the mug in both hands, letting the heat ground me. 13 years. That number echoed louder in the silence than any argument ever had. 13 years of adjusting my tone. 13 years of choosing the right moment to speak. 13 years of convincing myself that confusion was normal, that tension was temporary, that if I just loved better, we'd find our way back. I thought about the last 2 years in particular, how often I'd gone to bed with a tight chest, how often I'd replayed conversations in my head, wondering what version of myself would have been more acceptable. How often I'd apologized just to end the discomfort. And then I thought about the last 4 weeks. The calm, the clarity, the way my body had stopped bracing for impact. That contrast cracked something open inside me, because the truth, the one I'd been avoiding, was ugly and undeniable. I wasn't grieving the loss of him. I was grieving the loss of the illusion. The illusion that if I just tried harder, he'd meet me halfway. The illusion that love meant enduring disrespect quietly. The illusion that my worth was something he got to measure. That realization didn't feel empowering. It felt devastating. Sunday was worse. I did nothing. No errands, no gym, no distractions. I sat on the couch and let the memories come without editing them. The way he'd roll his eyes when I asked questions. The way silence became punishment. The way affection was rationed, given only when I was compliant. I remembered how often I'd told myself, this is just a phase. But phases don't last years. Patterns do. That night I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. The kind of crying that leaves you hollow afterward, like something essential has finally drained out. I cried for the future I thought we were building, for the version of me that believed safety could be negotiated, for the woman who thought being low maintenance meant being loved. Monday morning came too fast. I went to work, functioning on muscle memory alone, smiling when required, answering emails, sitting through meetings. But inside, I felt empty. Not numb, stripped. Jennifer noticed immediately. You don't look okay, she said quietly when she passed my desk. I'm not, I admitted. She didn't push, just nodded and said, that makes sense. That simple validation, no advice, no fixing, nearly broke me all over again. That evening, I went for a walk instead of going home right away. The sky was dim, the air cool. Couples passed me on the sidewalk, laughing, leaning into each other. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. What if I'm wrong? What if I should fight harder? What if this is just pride disguised as strength? I stopped walking and stood there, letting those thoughts run their course. Then another question surfaced, quiet, steady, unavoidable. If I go back, what am I actually going back to? Not the beginning, not the good years, not the man I fell in love with. I'd be going back to walking on eggshells, to decoding moods, to apologizing for existing too loudly. And suddenly, the doubt dissolved. Because the darkest moment isn't when you're alone. It's when you realize you've been alone for a long time and just refuse to admit it. That night, my phone buzzed once. A message from him. Just one line. I can't do this without you. I stared at it for a long time. And for the first time, I didn't feel pulled toward him. I felt pulled toward myself, toward the woman who deserved clarity, toward the life that didn't require constant self-negotiation. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down, lay back on the couch, and stared at the ceiling. Something inside me was shifting, not with anger, not with revenge, but with resolve. Because when you reach the lowest point, there's a strange kind of freedom in knowing. There's nothing left to lose. And that's when the real turning point begins. The turning point didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, like most real decisions do. Tuesday morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not anxious, not heavy, just alert. As if my body had already decided something my mind was still catching up to. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, replaying his last message. I can't do this without you. For years, that sentence would have pulled me straight back into the role I knew best. The fixer, the stabilizer, the emotional anchor. But now, it sounded different. It didn't sound like love. It sounded like dependence, and I finally understood the difference. At work, I moved through the day with a strange calm. The kind that comes after a storm has already passed and taken everything flimsy with it. Around mid-morning, his aunt called. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But something told me this conversation mattered. Not because it would change my decision, but because it would confirm it. I just wanted to check in, she said carefully. He's really struggling. I know, I replied. I've been told. There was a pause. Then she sighed. Can I be honest with you? Yes, I said. I don't think he ever expected you to actually step back, she admitted. He thought you'd panic, that you'd chase him, that you'd prove how much you cared. I closed my eyes. Hearing it said out loud felt like the final piece sliding into place. So when you didn't, she continued, it scared him. It scared him because he lost control, I said quietly. She didn't deny it. I've watched him do this before, she added, her voice softer now. Push people away, then resent them for not coming back the way he wanted. That was it. The confirmation I didn't know I'd been waiting for. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't poor communication. This wasn't a woman failing to love correctly. This was a pattern, and I had finally stepped out of it. I care about him, I said honestly, but I can't keep sacrificing myself to prove it. I understand, she replied. I wish he did. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time without opening another email, because something profound had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't asking, what should I do? I knew exactly what I was going to do. That afternoon, he called again. I let it ring. Then I sent one message, short, clear, unambiguous. We've talked. I've listened. I'm choosing not to continue this relationship. Please respect that. The phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another message came through. So that's it? Yes, I typed. That's it. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I didn't feel cruel or powerful. I felt aligned. That evening, I went to the gym and pushed myself harder than usual. Not out of anger, but out of release. With every breath, every movement, I felt something loosening inside me. I wasn't abandoning him. I was returning to myself. And once you see that clearly, there's no version of the story where you go back. Because the turning point isn't about winning. It's about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, self-respect over longing. And I had made my choice. The only thing left now was the fallout. And it wasn't going to land on me. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It rolled in slowly. Quiet conversations, fractured relationships, uncomfortable truths surfacing in places he never expected. And the most important part, I didn't have to do anything to make it happen. Once I stopped absorbing the impact meant for him, reality started correcting itself. The first cracks appeared in his family. His mother called again 2 days after my final message. Her voice was tense, controlled in that way people get when they're trying to hold a narrative together that's already falling apart. He's not himself, she said. He's barely sleeping. He keeps saying you abandoned him. I didn't argue. I respected what he asked for, I replied. Then I made a decision that protected me. That feels extreme, she said. I let the silence stretch. What feels extreme, I finally said, is telling someone to leave you alone and then punishing them for listening. She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice had changed. I suppose, she admitted quietly, I didn't realize how clearly he said it. That was the first shift. Not defense, not blame, recognition. His aunt reached out later that week. She didn't ask me to reconsider. She didn't try to negotiate. She just said, I'm sorry you were put in that position. That mattered. Because it meant someone else finally saw what I'd been carrying. Meanwhile, his life began unraveling in ways he couldn't control. Friends stopped taking sides once they heard the full timeline. Some pulled away quietly. Others asked questions he couldn't answer without contradicting himself. The story he wanted to tell, that I was cold, unfeeling, heartless, didn't hold up under scrutiny because I hadn't yelled, I hadn't cheated, I hadn't disappeared. I had listened. And that made him look exactly like what he was afraid of being seen as. At work, he started calling in sick more often, showing up late, missing deadlines. Mutual acquaintances mentioned it casually, without realizing how much it confirmed what I already knew. He had relied on me to regulate his life, and without that, everything felt unstable. One afternoon, I ran into Jason, someone who'd known us both for years. He hesitated before speaking, then finally said, I didn't realize how much pressure you were under until you stepped back. I smiled faintly. Neither did I. Honestly, he added, you seem better. I am, I said. And it wasn't a lie. I stopped receiving messages entirely by the end of the week. No more emotional pleas. No more indirect pressure through friends. No more last attempts to reopen a door I had already closed. He didn't collapse dramatically. He just lost ground. Slowly, publicly, inevitably. And through it all, I stayed calm. No revenge, no victory speeches, no need to prove anything. I moved my things out of shared digital spaces, updated accounts, quietly separated what needed separating. Each small action felt like exhaling. The most unexpected part of the fallout wasn't watching him struggle. It was realizing how little chaos existed in my life once I stopped managing his emotions for him. I woke up steady, went to work clear-headed, spent time with people who didn't require me to shrink. And one evening, sitting alone in my living room, I understood something with startling clarity. I hadn't destroyed my marriage. And when I let go, it arrives in small, almost unnoticeable moments. Quiet mornings, honest laughter, the absence of fear where it used to live. 3 months after everything ended, I caught myself smiling in the mirror for no reason. Not the polite, practiced smile I used to wear. A real one, the kind that reaches your eyes without effort. Work felt different. Not because my job changed, but because I wasn't carrying emotional weight that didn't belong to me anymore. I left the office on time. I stayed late when I wanted to. I made decisions without bracing for someone else's reaction. Jennifer noticed. "You look solid," she said one morning by the elevator. "Like you're standing on your own feet." "I am," I replied, and it felt good to say it without hesitation. 6 months later, I ran into him at the grocery store. We noticed each other at the same time. He looked tired, older somehow, like someone who'd been waiting for something that never came. He took a step toward me. I didn't step back. I just gave him a polite nod, nothing cold, nothing warm, and turned toward the checkout. No words, no explanations. No reopening. That was when I knew I was truly done. Later that week, Marcus asked me over beers, "Any regrets about not fighting harder?" I thought about it carefully, about the years of walking on eggshells, about translating moods into survival strategies, about confusing love with endurance. "No," I said, "none." He raised his glass. "That's fair." It was more than fair. It was honest. A year later, at Ryan's wedding, his new wife asked with a smile, "Are you seeing anyone special?" "Not seriously," I said. "I'm still figuring out what I really want." She nodded knowingly. "The right person won't make you guess. They'll tell you what they need." She was right. I learned that the hard way, through silence, confusion, and finally, clarity. Here's the truth I wish someone had told me earlier. Love isn't proven by chasing someone who pushes you away. Caring doesn't mean ignoring your own boundaries. And when someone tells you to leave them alone, sometimes the kindest, strongest thing you can do is listen. He asked for space. I gave it to him. And in that space, I found myself. Not the version of me that bends and waits. Not the version that apologizes for existing. The real one. The woman who chooses peace. The woman who values clarity over chaos. The woman who knows that words matter, and so do consequences. I didn't lose my marriage. I outgrew it. And I never looked back. Lesson for you if you're listening. If someone keeps changing the rules, it's not because you're failing the game. It's because the game was never meant to be fair. Choose yourself anyway. That choice will save your life.